everybody, welcome to another George Crafts tutorial video. Today we are going to build on working in the round in crochet a little bit more. So if you are new to us here, check out our other videos for crochet on George Crafts, the YouTube channel, or on georgecrafts.co.uk. In the last video we talked about working granny squares, which is kind of our first step into working things in the round. So today we're going to move on a little bit more to a few other techniques. So first of all, I just want to show you some different ways of starting off working in the round. So I've got my 6.5mm hook and some scraps of yarn again. So I'm just going to tie a slip knot. So this first way of working in the round is the way I showed you working with granny squares. So we'll just do a quick recap. So I've done my slip knot. Just going to put my loop over my hook. So I'm going to make 4 chain stitches. Okay, and then to join this into a loop, I'm going to take my hook, pass it through the first stitch that I made in my chain, grab a hold of my yarn, pull it through my stitch and through the loop. And there you'll be able to see that I have got a loop of stitches now. So then you would just carry on working in the round. Okay, so I'll show you again just one more time. Okay, so slip knot, loop over my hook, make the chain of however many stitches the pattern tells you. So 1, 2, 3. I'll just do 4 because 4 is quite common and you don't want to sit and watch me make chain stitches. So to join into a loop we use what's called a slip stitch. So we take our hook, pass it through the stitch, wrap the yarn around the hook, bring the yarn through the stitch and through the loop that's on the hook. Okay, and then we're ready to start working in the round. Okay, so we have a nice little loop of stitches there that we can work into. Right. The second way I'd like to show you is a little bit more advanced. This method is used quite a lot for either making things like beanie hats in double crochet, used a lot in making toys and characters. So still start off with making a slip knot. And then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to chain 2 stitches. So 1 and 2. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to double crochet into my first stitch and I'm going to do 6. Okay, so this is double crochet a ring is what you'll see written as a pattern. So double crochet 6 into a ring is what the instructions will say. So we'll do that. So there's going to be our first one, and then our second. Oops, quite fiddly with the chunky yarn. Once you've done 2, it becomes a lot easier to see where you're putting your hook. So we're going to do 3. And 4. And 5, and 6. Okay. So then if you want to tighten it, you just pull on your tail to tighten up the ring. Okay. At this point you'd carry on working into the first stitch again. So for your next round you just start working into the first double crochet that you made, so into here. So I'll show you that technique again. So I'm just going to unpick everything. So double crochet into a ring. Make a slip knot. Loop onto the hook. Make 2 chain stitches. and then start working your double crochets into your first chain. So you go in the first one, double crochet. Can you see that loop? That's where we're making our stitches. So that's number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Okay, and then we'll start our work into the first double crochet, which would be that one. Okay, now when you are working in the round like this, you may very often have to use a stitch marker because you won't necessarily know where one round ends and one round begins, which is fine if you're doing the same number of stitches all the way around. But if you're doing increases and decreases, which you very often will be in the round, you need to know where you start and finish. So I am going to talk a little bit about stitch markers in this video, but I'll just show you how to pop one on. Okay, so I'm going to make our 2 chains, 1 and 2, double crochet in 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what I like to do when I need to put a stitch marker on in this situation is, after I finish the final stitch of the round, I just take my stitch marker and then I pop it onto the stitch just like that. So now, no matter where I am in my round, I know where I start and where I finish. So this stitch marker marks the final stitch in my round each time. Okay, and don't worry if you don't have a stitch marker, because you don't need them. Instead, you can just use a piece of yarn in a different colour, just one of your scraps. So I've got quite a long piece there, you don't really need it that long. And all you need to do is just take your hook and pull it through, and then loop the 2 ends in. Okay, so if you haven't got stitch markers, you don't need to worry, you don't need to go out and buy them, you don't need to spend lots of money. Just use the tail end of your yarn and from another ball, just to make sure you can see it. So what you would do next is you just carry on working into the round like you were before. So we'll do our next round. So I'll do increases just so you can see a bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to do 2 double crochets into each stitch. Okay, until we get to the end. And I'll know we're at the end because I'll come up to my stitch marker on my piece of yarn. Bear with me, my yarn's going rogue. That happens a lot in crochet, your yarn going rogue. Okay, so now I know this is the last stitch that I've made on the previous round, so I just continue working as normal. And then what you do, you just either put on a brand new stitch marker, and then when you finish you take all the stitch markers off, or what I usually do is I just take this one off because you don't need it there anymore, you don't need to know where that was. And then I'll just pop it onto the final stitch in the round that I've just done. Okay, so just like I showed you before, to use the yarn as a stitch marker, pop your hook through the last stitch that you did, grab hold of it and just pull it through, and then put your fingers through the hole and loop it on. Easy as that. Okay, so that's how you work in the round, starting with double crocheting into a ring. Okay, so the final method that I want to show you to start working in the round is called an adjustable ring or a magic ring. I really like this because it makes the finish of your work nice and neat. It's used a lot in Japanese crochet, amigurumi, making the little characters and toys, so it's a useful technique to learn, but quite often it can be a little bit complicated, so you need someone to show you, really, because it took me ages to learn how to do this. So you take your yarn and you keep your fingers like this. You bring the yarn over your hand. Whoops. Bring the yarn over your hand so the tail is pointing towards you. And then just wrap it round like this. Hold on to it with your thumb. And then put the rest of your yarn under your little finger. Take your crochet hook. Place it underneath both loops that you've made and around your fingers. Grab that second loop and pull it underneath the first one. Grab your yarn again and pull it through. Okay, and then you just start working in double crochet around both pieces of that loop that you made. So grab the yarn and double crochet. Grab the yarn, double crochet, grab your yarn and double crochet. Okay, now this might look a little bit rubbish to begin with, okay, but what you do when you've got enough stitches that the pattern tells you you need, you just grab hold of the tail of your yarn and pull it so it goes nice and tight, and that means you won't have a large gap in the middle of your stitches because you can just keep pulling on the tail until they're all closed. So it's nice and neat and you don't need to worry about huge gaps in the middle of your work. So I'll show you that again because it is a little bit fiddly. So pop your hand like this and bring the yarn towards you so your tail is pointing towards you. Oops. Wrap your yarn around your fingers and hold it with your thumb, so you've got two strips of yarn across those fingers, and then all the rest of the yarn that's still attached to the ball, it goes underneath your little finger. Take your crochet hook and grab the second loop, take your crochet hook, put it under the yarn and bring the yarn towards you, and then start working in double crochet. So take the hook, pass it underneath everything, grab your yarn and bring it back, and then close the two loops together that are on your hook. Okay, and then just take it off your fingers, hold the yarn as you would normally hold it, and just continue putting your hook through to get your yarn, and then closing your loops together to do your double crochet stitch. Okay, right, so that's how you start working in the round, and I'll show you how to different ways of carrying on in sort of progressing. Now I started making this this little sample. I'll unpick it after the video. It's basically, it's the very beginning of our fruit bowl project. Obviously it's not extended wide enough for a fruit bowl. I don't think you'd even get an apple in that. But I just wanted to show you how you join your stitches together once you started working. So I made 4 chains and then joined them with a slip stitch, and then I've been working in treble around that ring. Now I want to build up the walls, so I'm not doing any increases. So I've gone all the way around my first round, and what I do is I just use a slip stitch. I count up 1, 2, 3 because I've been working in treble crochet, pop my hook through my work, bring the yarn through that stitch and through the loop that's on my hook. My round is closed together, and then I do a chain stitch. In this case I've done 3 chains because I'm working in treble crochet, and then I will just go round in treble crochet as I was before. I don't need a stitch marker for working in the round this way because it's very easy to tell where I start and where I stop because I've got this difference in height. Okay, so I'll just show you again, but basically if you can do the granny square you can work in the round in this way because it's the same method, it just looks a little bit different because it's not a square shape. So I've gone around my round, I've got to my last stitch, I need to do a slip stitch to join it all together. Okay, so I've got my hook, pass through the stitch that I'm joining onto, grab a hold of my yarn, pull it towards me and close up the loop, and then just do the appropriate number of chain stitches, it will tell you in the pattern, and then carry on working. Okay, so this way of working in the round is quite useful when you are working with the larger stitches, such as your trebles, because the way I showed you before with the stitch marker, if you started working your trebles just continuously round without using your slip stitch and your chains, you'd end up with a very wonky line as you'd sort of squash down your stitches so that they would fit, so it wouldn't be nice and straight. So that's why when you're using things like your trebles and your bigger stitches, it's useful to work with slip stitches and chains to join your work together and keep going. So that's one way of doing things. And then the second way of doing things is pretty much what I showed you when I showed you how to use the stitch markers. So I know that this is the last stitch in my round because I prepped it with a stitch marker. I just borrowed the stitch marker from there briefly to show you how to use them already. So we've got my round, and I'm just going to carry on going round in double crochet. Using your stitch marker to work in the round, you can either use that as we start off with the double crochet into a ring, or the adjustable ring or the magic ring, but basically just work in your round. I think I've got 18 stitches here to go through, so just sort of amuse yourselves till I get to the end. I'm joking, keep watching. So it's really up to you which way round you work. There's no right or wrong way. You can use any of the methods for anything. I mean, you can use the adjustable ring for a granny square if you want to. It's just that some ways work better than others. So obviously if you've got a, I don't know, say you've got a chain 6 and join into the round with a slip stitch, and you are making toys, you can end up with quite a large gap, and your toy stuffing is going to come out of the hole, and it won't be a cute little character. It'll be kind of something a bit out of a nightmare. Whereas if you've got your magic ring or your double crochet into a ring, you can pull on the tail of your stitches to close your gap up. Right, so I've got to the end of my round, and I know it's the end of my round because my stitch marker marks my place from my previous round. All I do, I work into that stitch as I as the pattern tells me to, or as I want to, make my stitch, and then I just make the loop really big so I'm not going to unpick my work. Take the stitch marker off from its old place and then pop it on to the new stitch. I'm trying to be very careful so you can see where my last stitch is, and then I would just carry on round and round each time, moving my stitch marker when I get to the end of the round. And it's a good way just to keep your place so you don't get lost and go wrong, basically. So that's pretty much everything there is to know about working in the round. So the first video and this video, that's pretty much all I need to tell you. Any questions, any problems, or anything that you'd like me to explain differently, anything like that, just get in touch either on georgecrafts.co.uk or in the comments under the video. I'll try my very best to help you if there's anything. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you love crafting, have a look on georgecrafts.co.uk because there's lots of projects coming up and competitions and bits like that. Okay, thanks, I'll see you again, bye!